Watching on YouTube, it is surreal to see the graphic behind me that the phenomenal AJ Styles is officially in the Hall of Fame WWE class of 2026, joining Stephanie McMahon. I do think it is really cool that they've had The Undertaker sort of become the guy that tells you you're going into the WWE Hall of Fame. I think the Grim Reaper of Souls becoming the guy to put the guy in his final resting place, if you will, in the Hall of Fame. And of course, we know Taker has a history with almost every WWE superstar that's ever come through the doors of World Wrestling Entertainment. And AJ Styles, and we all remember the Boneyard match that they had at WrestleMania 36, which turned out to be The Undertaker's last match. Now, I know all the AEW fans are upset. You know, they wanted AJ Styles to quote unquote leave the E and go to a real company and finish his career. You know, wrestling guys like Samoa Joe over there in AEW. But AJ's made it clear that, you know, he didn't want to go back to TNA. You know, he made it clear that he wanted to retire at the Royal Rumble. I think I do find it interesting that on the Raw recap podcast itself, he said WrestleMania has lost its luster a little bit, and you could certainly make that case, you know, over the two night extravaganza, that it's not the same as a one night, that everybody gets on the card, that it's not, you know, working to get on the card the way it used to be. And ultimately, you know, this was AJ Styles' decision. And AJ said he was going to retire at WrestleMania 41, you know, having a feud. And then he got hurt. Remember, they did that storyline where it was going to be AJ Styles' sort of last run. And then he hurt his ankle immediately. I can't remember if it was in a match against Carmelo Hayes or what it was. But AJ was a heel at the time. And he was turning back babyface. Immediately got hurt. Came back and had his feud with Logan Paul. And you know, we had heard for years that AJ wanted to retire somewhere in 2026. You know, it does feel like that 2025 was obviously the retirements of Goldberg and John Cena. 2026 feels like the retirements of AJ Styles, Edge, Brock Lesnar, Chris Jericho. It does feel like that this generation now is sort of leaving behind, and that WWE now is focusing on your Javon Evans, your Trick Williams, your Gunthers, your Obafemis, you know, your Joe Hendrys. These guys that are going to be Carmelo Hayes, Ilya Dragunov. These guys are going to be the future of the business. And AJ, you know, I remember watching him in TNA. He was one of my favorites when I first started watching TNA, 2011, 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. I think right around the Aces and Eights era is where I sort of bowed out. But he was one of my favorite wrestlers. Everybody said that outside of Shawn Michaels, he may be the best in-ring wrestler of all time. And, you know, the last 10 years in WWE, AJ's done everything you can imagine. You know, tag team champion, world champion, U.S. champion, Intercontinental champion, personal feuds. I mean, he's feuded with Shane McMahon and management, the Kevin Owens feud over the United States Championship, the feud he had with James Ellsworth and Dean Ambrose over the WWE Championship, the classic matches he's had with John Cena, Crown Jewel of this year, Royal Rumble 2017. You know, him and Randy Orton. I always loved the phenomenal forearm and into the RKO spots. The tag team with Amos and Amos being AJ Styles' bodyguard, I thoroughly enjoyed. You know, we got a dream match between AJ Styles and Edge at WrestleMania 38, which hindsight is 2020. I wish that didn't involve the Judgment Day and Edge turning, and we would have just got a babyface Edge versus babyface AJ Styles match. I think it could have worked. You know, I know Vince used to believe that you have to have a heel. You can't do face versus face. I think you can do face versus face. You look no further than CM Punk and Roman Reigns. We got to see AJ Styles and Roman Reigns. I don't think they ever locked horns again. You know, after 2016 until the 2024 Fatal Four Way. That was one of my favorite feuds for AJ right out of the box. Was his matches with Roman at Extreme Rules and Payback. And I think the one thing you can say about AJ is no matter if he was a face, no matter if he was a heel, no matter if he was world champion, no matter if he was mid-card champion, no matter if he was tag team champion, he was a spectacle to see. You respected his work, and you felt like you were never going to get cheaped out. Every time you heard the phenomenal AJ Styles and you heard that yip, yip, yip music hit, you knew you were going to get a show, and you knew that this man could put on a match with literally anybody. I mean, I still will never forget the 2020 match he had with Daniel Bryan on a July episode of SmackDown for the vacant Intercontinental Championship, in the PC where there were people banging on the glass. They went for 40 minutes, and to this day, it's one of my favorite matches of AJ Styles because of the technical wrestling. And again, AJ could be a high flyer, he could be a technical wrestler, he could be, malicious, he could be, this guy that could fly all over the ring. And it's so interesting to me that, guys like Jeff Hardy, right, who we've seen over the years, their body break down and Hardy not able to do the dives like he used to. And, we've seen AJ's body break down. We saw AJ not be as fast or as healthy as he was earlier in his career. But you've watched him over the past year since he's been healthy, similar to Jeff Hardy, I would argue in that matter, that, wrestling takes a toll on these guys' bodies. And I think it is an interesting conversation that I think Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso had on Cody's well, What Do You Want to Talk About podcast, which is in collaboration with WWE. And Cody, has been talking to Triple H and saying, we need to bring back house shows. These guys need reps. And I think that it was, over the COVID-19 pandemic, there was, okay, there's no house shows anymore. Okay, house shows haven't been as profitable. Let's sort of go away from house shows. These guys don't really need to be wrestling 5, 6 days a week. But they also don't. And now, the logic is let's not have them wrestle every week on TV. Let's have them wrestle every other week at best on TV. Let's sort of save their bodies for the big PLE matches. But these guys are getting hurt more often. And, I think the more reps, the better. But that's obviously a different conversation for another day. For AJ, he's an all-time talent. It's hard when you do these lists of favorite wrestlers of all time because Edge is obviously my favorite of all time. The Undertaker, Triple H, John Cena, Bray Wyatt, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Brock Lesnar. AJ Styles is in that group. And that's the biggest compliment I can give. Everybody wants to say, who is your wrestling Mount Rushmore? And to me, wrestling is sort of similar to baseball, where it's like eras, right? In wrestling, we had, the Bob Backlund era, and the Bruno Sammartino era. Then you had the Hogan era. Then you had the Stone Cold and Rock era. Then you had the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels era. Then you had the John Cena era. Then you had the Roman Reigns era. Now we're in sort of the Cody Rhodes era. That you can make an argument Cody, Roman, Punk are, all three sort of sharing that spotlight. And, there's so many great talent when you talk about all those eras that's hard to just pick, oh, AJ's for sure top five. And there's an in-ring work. I think him, Seth Rollins, I'll never forget their Money in the Bank match at 2019 when, AJ countered that curb stomp into a Styles Clash for the first time. I thought that was one of the coolest counters I've ever seen. I think AJ, Seth Rollins, and Shawn Michaels are the three best in-ring workers I've seen. But again, AJ could do it all. In TNA, great rivals with Christopher Daniels, Kazarian, which was awesome to see, obviously, on Raw on Tuesday. Abyss, Samoa Joe, Bobby Roode, James Storm, Beer Money. I mean, AJ came up with a great group of talent. Obviously, his history in New Japan with Good Brothers, Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura. Never forget when AJ Styles flew in 2017 for TLC. People were sick. They were out with mono or something. And AJ and Finn Balor tore the house down as well. So, we did top 10 matches of John Cena's career. Me, Michael Ryder, and Jalen Sandvik go back. That was a ton of fun. It may be worth looking at doing the top 10 matches in the career of the phenomenal AJ Styles. We can include TNA in that list because there's so much to go back into. That man was as good of an in-ring wrestler, deserved the Hall of Fame. Now, The Undertaker even got me last night for a second. Oh, wait a minute. They actually, The Undertaker and AJ Styles was the match that we wanted at WrestleMania 36. Would have been a dream match. I still contend WrestleMania 36 was on track to be one of the best WrestleManias ever, and COVID changed it, obviously. But, the Becky Lynch Shayna Baszler feud was hot. You had Edge and Randy Orton, Drew and Lesnar, Roman Goldberg, which maybe the Tribal Chief doesn't get born from that. So, and AJ Styles and Undertaker is right there. I mean, there's so much to think about when it comes to the career of AJ Styles. But whether he decides to go to TNA, which I doubt it, don't think he would go to AEW. I do think he's retired. I've been on the record. I think Gunther was the right person to retire him. I thought he was going to retire, at the Royal Rumble and lose to Gunther if you read for all the tea leaves. And I think that AJ, unlike Cena, didn't want a year-run retirement tour, but he wanted to wrestle some of the best on his way out, and he got to do that. John Cena, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Gunther. And he went out on top, just like the way the Never Seen 17 did. And I would love it if Cena was the one to induct AJ Styles, as it is rumored in the Hall of Fame class.
Like that clip from the Brand's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brand's World podcast right here on YouTube.